Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 26th meeting of the Park Cities Rotary Club this year. Before we call everything to order, I'd like everyone to stand up if you could and say hi to your table mates, and obviously any new members, please make yourself known. And we'll talk for a few minutes and we'll get the show on the road. Okay, everyone, let's take a seat. I'm going to have Paul PIROK come up here and do our pledge and national anthem.
What? Who are you trying to get a picture of? Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our Friday afternoon meeting. Do we have any prayer concerns you'd like me to share before we bow our heads? Okay, I guess not. If you would bow your head. Our Lord, we're grateful for the ability to meet, to be in fellowship, and to do good works. Many people do not have these freedoms, but we understand that freedom comes with great responsibility. So we pray for patience, patience to listen to others, patience to recognize and appreciate different points of view, patience to make decisions on what's important to us. Once we've made these decisions, we pray for persistence. Persistence in our efforts to do right and to do good, persistence in the face of doubt, and persistence in the face of adversity. And finally, we pray for protection. Protect us from those who would keep us from completing our mission. Protect us from those who would eliminate our freedoms, and protect those that serve to protect us, as these protectors are the ultimate servant leaders. We pray these things in your name. Amen. All right, if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, somebody put the flags on the wrong side. Every Boy Scout knows what's wrong. We're fixing this. Okay, now we can say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last leaving, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Paul. And now Richard is going to walk around for Happy Bucks. Do we have any Happy Bucks? Anyone?
All right.
Thing you want to be happy about or make a donation?
All right.
Need a box, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I am here with my band of merry men, and we have the district awards that were given last year for Jeff McNaughton's year. Well, this year the district shrunk them. Remember they used to stand in the front on big banners? Oh, they're tiny now. But not anymore, because Van Oliver decided to put them into wonderful shadow boxes and puts them out for display every week. So when you walk by and you happen to see Van Oliver, say thanks.
Thanks, man.
Go Chiefs!
Chiefs.
Okay. Okay, Mark, do you need to do?
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it to you.
Okay, here you go. Mine is a very personal one. I have some granddaughters, and last week, one of them, playing soccer, made 3 goals, which is really great. And her cousin made a home run in softball. So it was a big week for our family.
I'd like for Tom Swift to come up here with me just for a quick second. Where are you, Tom? Yeah.
Up to his shenanigans for certain.
Well, you know the Super Bowl is coming up, and I think the halftime entertainment is Taylor Swift. Am I right about that? Yeah. Well, you know, Tom here is so proud of his grandniece that he's invited her to come to our Rotary and bring her boyfriend, Travis Kelce. Isn't that terrific?
That is great news. You got to pay some money for that too, Tom.
Date to be determined.
I am just thrilled and happy that we had such a good strategic planning session this last weekend, and I thank everybody who participated in it. It was a great day.
Absolutely.
Okay, how much did Happy put in?
Okay. $40. $40.
All right, well, I got more on the Niners.
I want to wish everybody a happy Groundhog Day. And I also want to say thank you very, very much to our new Maggiano manager, Scott, who found me at the bottom of the stairs and took my hand and step by step by step, both layers of the stairs, sat me down in a chair and brought me some water until I caught my breath well enough to come into the meeting. And do thank him, because it's going to be at least 3 more weeks before we have an elevator.
Yep.
See you later.
Happy bug. I want to give thanks again, as Nolan said, for the planning session we had this last Saturday. It was great. And who all participated last week in the planning? Raise your hand. So obviously it's a club effort, guys, and we appreciate everyone's input, because that's what makes this club work. So thank you very much. Guest. Do we have guest? Introduction of guest. Anyone? Yes. No guest. Okay, moving on then. Great. I'd now like to have Van come up, speak to the foundation. And again, Van, thanks again for the window boxes for all the awards we won.
In case you don't recognize me, I'm the private at arms, I call myself. I was not here last month because I was on a trip, and Herb Hammond thankfully stepped in and helped me out. And Herb told me, because he's a multitasker of an excellent degree, that I should lose 5 pounds on my trip, you know. Well, Herb, I've got 15 to go. What a great day it is, beginning in February, with its 29 leap year days this year. And if you have a grandmother or anybody else that's older and they're 80 years old, they've only had 20 birthdays then, because it's the leap year. And it's also got Valentine, as we've talked about it, and it's a celebration today of the National Medal of Honor Museum, which is just great. And also we do a big congratulations each month to our members who have a birthday during the month. And this year we have, or this month, we have 9 club members, and our tradition is to encourage them to make a contribution to our foundation, which we support 9 collaborative or 10 collaborative partners, and there are many of them: Austin Street Shelter, Bonton Farms, Agape, Salvation Army. I mean, you name it, we've done it. And it's really great. And it's also in the name of service above self, which is one of our themes. Turning back to the birthday members, February's zodiac sign, which I usually point out, is the dragon. And the dragon suggests that our members have birthdays this year are gifted leaders with passion. And when you couple that with Valentine's Day, I suggest they are lovers and leaders. And to my knowledge, all of them are married, and 2/3 of them are prominent leaders of our club. We have 4 past, present, or future presidents in Cleve, Phil, Jeff, and Nolan. And then I have to say we've got great communicators in this club, with Jeff, Richard being among the top ones, but also this year 2 birthday members are Betty Dawson and Mark Neese. And what about Betty? I mean, she's the chair of our Hub weekly publication, and I can't think of any, I mean, to me, she has incredible wisdom, wit, you know, great comments, great quotes, and a great presentation. And of course, Mark has a great presentation for our weekly meetings and the like. So we have to thank them that. And last, I want to say that unless you forget it, remember to praise and acknowledge your loved ones on February the 14th. Its origin comes from 2 brothers in the year around 1330 AD, and they were marrying Catholic Church members, and the emperor at that time, Claudius III, or the second, I'm sorry, found out about it, imprisoned them, and eventually executed them. While in prison, one of the brothers, named Valentine, sent a note to his love interest and said, "From your Valentine." So that's how it started. Now the Catholic Church made them, christened them, made them, canonized them as saints, had a St. Valentine's Day for the longest time, and then they eventually took it off their annual calendar, but the sentiments and the feelings and the name continued. First by the Richard Cadbury chocolate firm, who in the 1860s created a box of chocolates in the form of a heart. And then you've, of course, brought forward to Tom Hanks and, and Forrest Gump, he said, well, life is a box of chocolates, And I can't say it like, Jeff probably can say it, but anyway, you remember that. And then also in 1913, 111 years ago, the Hallmark Cards Group put together the first Valentine's Day cards, which you now use, and that was 110 years ago. So in case you don't know, in 2021, the average money that was spent for Valentine's Day was $165. So that just gives you a gauge as to how much you could either, spend or get away with, So that I just wanted to bring that up. And the last thing I have to do is we obviously honor our people that have birthdays, and then we suggest that they do a tradition of giving some money to our foundation for this club. And today, Lori gave me a medal for Paul PIROK, who's here, and for his contributions. And I don't do as good a job as Greg does, bringing people up here, but Paul, you're supposed to come up here and receive this. And he's one of our great communicators, even though he doesn't have a February birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And past president.
Thank you, Van. I always love your announcements because you learn so much, and that was great. And now I'd like to have Jill Jordan, actually Mary Bishop, I'm sorry, come up to speak to the Marketplace Advertiser.
Hello. LYNN SURLS, a longtime member and a past officer of the club, has been regularly supporting, through Marketplace Advertisers, our hub that Betty so graciously does. And it's my understanding at the end of each year, the hub is taken and put in a notebook. How many of you have received, who are past presidents, had received the hub? And they put in a notebook and they present it to the past president. And it goes back so far that they can really know who has been our speakers for that many years. So the hub is really important. Thank you, Betty. And LYNN's company is interesting. Are any of you into woodwork? Okay. He is with the Richardson Timber Group, and they are a timber milling company. And sometimes I think we don't realize how important wood is to us. This is the beauty and the veins and the coloring, and they do specialized custom millwork. So if you're looking for anything in all varieties of fir, Douglas fir, red western cedar, mixed hardwoods, specialty exotic woods. Now these are harder and harder to get, as you well know. So if you really want the quality for your home or for your business, LYNN SURLS says please contact him. He'd be glad to help in any way. He works with builders, people, anybody looking for their homes, buildings, or other structures. And this company has been around since 1949, so they have a world of experience. So I hope you would consider using Richardson Timbers.
Thanks, Mary. And now I'd like to have Jill Jordan come up and speak to our parade.
Okay, parade time, one more time. 3 things to know. First is this is the last day to submit your parade theme ideas. At this point, we have 37 different ideas. So what's going to happen, given that volume, is we're going to have a group of folks, we're going to cull it down to about half of that size. Then next Friday, you need to come to the meeting because we're going to then vote on the best theme. So it's an in-person vote, so you want to vote for your idea, make sure that you come next Friday. The next thing is nominations for Grand Marshal. They are due next Friday as well. And then the third thing is I've loaded our club's website under the Volunteers tab with all of the different sign-up opportunities. So you can go on there and sign up for all of the different positions. So that's it for today, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jill. And as she noted, clearly this is the best time to find an opportunity to volunteer for our biggest event. So if you haven't signed up for anything to do with the parade, please do so. I know everyone will appreciate it, particularly Jill. So thank you, Jill. A few announcements. We have on February 18th, you've probably seen Happy's emails going out to the social event for Joey's at NORTHPARK from 5:30 to 7. You can register online, and then there's CRAWFISH Festival on March 9th. It's that time of year coming up for crawfish, so do the same thing there. And then there's no meeting again on March 29th due to Easter holidays. And now it's time to do our raffle. Sergio, what's the number today? What are we at? Like 5? 617. Ooh, 617. So the way it works, our speaker today is Chris is going to pull a number out of a hat, and if you have that number, you have a chance to win half the pot. If you pull the ace of spades out of the card deck. Okay. And the winning number is, the last 4 numbers are 1306. Woohoo! 1306. Let me see that number. You passed the audit.
Oh, so close.
But yet so far. Yep. Okay. I'd like to have Paul PIROK come up now and introduce our guest.
Y'all getting tired of seeing me up here? And Van, it's no big surprise that our modern Valentine's Day was created by a card company and a chocolate company. No surprise there. Well, we're in for a real treat today. We've got Chris Cassidy as our guest speaker. Chris has got the resume that makes all of us feel inadequate. Naval Academy, graduate degree at MIT, Navy SEAL, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 space flights with NASA, 10 spacewalks, and almost a year in space when he had it all up. Since 2021, he's been president and CEO of the National Medal of Honor Museum in Arlington, and he's going to come up and tell us about the museum. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. And let me just tell you, as a young guy growing up in a small town in Maine, I never dreamed about any of that stuff that was just kind of rattled off. And it was when I was in space last time in 2020 when it kind of dawned on me how lucky I was and my colleagues that get to do that, were we to have a view of the Earth from that viewpoint, represent our country, doing something that's very international and very cooperative. And it's very, very, very cool to look out the window and see Earth going by at 5 miles a second. Let me just tell you, and I'll share a little bit about that with you. But as I mentioned, I think a person or two has heard me talk before, but there's one thing that I always like to share with the group, and that's how I ended up in the military. I was just a normal kid going to school and playing sports and being a brother and a son and a teammate, and not really focused much on anything else. And then I realized at some point in high school, like, oh, this college thing, you got to pay for it somehow. And that's what kind of clued me into the military. And you, most of you in the room here remember the guidance counselor's office where you thumb through a big giant book and there's pictures of schools, and that was the version of surfing the internet for colleges back in the day. And I saw a picture of the United States Naval Academy, cool buildings, sharp-looking men and women in uniform, in marching in order, and it just felt right to me. And I was like, okay, this is a place that I want to go. And at the bottom it said it's free to go there and everything. So everything was lining up in a good way for me. And I was like, okay, this is good. And then the other instructions said you have to apply to your congressman to get an appointment to go there. And so I sent off the paperwork and I got an interview, and I went to Augusta, Maine, the state capital. And I went with the interview, and it all went pretty well. And I came out of the room, and the lady goes, okay, good job, Chris, we'll take it from here. And 17-year-old me, Mom, good? Nothing else? You don't need me to send in anything else? No, we got it, we'll take care of it. So that was the fall of my senior year in high school. Fast forward, spring of my senior year in high school, when everybody's getting information from the schools that you applied to if you're in or not, and I was getting that from other schools, but nothing from the Naval Academy. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer. I picked up the phone, I called the admissions office, and nice person says, oh yeah, sure, we'll help you out, no problem. What's your name? Tell her my name. Can you spell that for me? I hear her rummaging through files. What's your social security number? More files. And finally, she said, I'm really sorry, but we have nothing on you in our system. Turns out I missed a key piece of information where you have to apply to the school and your congressman's office separately. And so effectively, I hadn't applied to the place I really wanted to go to. But here's where the story gets interesting, because as luck or divine intervention or whatever, my best friend and I had planned to join his father on a business trip from Maine to Washington, D.C. the next week, which was our spring vacation. And so we did that. The only difference now is that time I took an afternoon and went over from D.C. to Annapolis. It's like a 30-minute drive. And went to the admissions office and walked in, and she said, oh, I remember your story. You're the Cassidy guy, right? Yes, ma'am. You need to talk to Captain Malillo. He's the person for the New England region that handles this kind of stuff, and he's second door on the right. You can't miss him, down the hall. There you go. He's in his office right now. So I walked down the hallway, turned the corner, and if you're familiar with military stereotypes, this guy was a Marine Corps poster child. Uniform, shoes you see a reflection in, square jaw, the whole 9 yards. And I was very taken aback, like, oh boy, what's going on here? But I kind of instinctively knew this was my chance. I got to tell him my story. So I share with him what happened. Total time in his office, 5, 6, 7 minutes, maybe tops. He nods his head a little bit, not a lot of talking, and then he says, okay, I'll take care, I'll see what I can do and get back to you. The whole trip back to New England, I thought, well, at least I can sleep well at night, knowing that I tried, but the Naval Academy is clearly not in my future. When the next week I got paged to the school front desk for a phone call, and it was him on the phone and said, hey, Cassidy, Captain Malillo here. I got good news. I can get you into the Naval Academy prep school, but I need an answer right now if you're in or not. And I didn't know what the prep school was, what it meant, what the time commitment was. But I just kind of, in my gut, I was like, this is my chance. Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm in. Turns out, without that gift, a gift from somebody that didn't know me, never saw me again, I wouldn't be up here today talking to you about the Medal of Honor Museum or astronauts or SEAL stuff, because he gave me an opportunity. With that opportunity, the prep school was 1 year in Newport, Rhode Island. If you maintain certain standards, you automatically get to go to Annapolis. While I was in Annapolis, I met my first Navy SEAL. This was in the late 1990, so not a lot of people knew about SEALs then, and I didn't as well. And that was an intriguing career path for me, which I chose. And while I was in the SEAL teams, about 5 or 6 years into my Navy SEAL career is when I met another gentleman who enlightened me, Bill Shepard. He was the first Navy SEAL to become an astronaut, and he kind of told me what the path was, and it's possible. Up until then, I thought you had to be a pilot or you had to do other stuff, but it couldn't be me. And through his guidance and mentorship, I found myself applying to NASA and got selected in 2004, and as was mentioned, 3 trips to space, once on a space shuttle and 2 Russian Soyuz rides, spent about a year of my life on the space station, and now proudly here in the Dallas Metroplex helping build the Museum for the Medal of Honor. All of that because somebody gave me an opportunity. And I take time to share that story because, especially in this room, I'm sure all of you are Captain Malillo for somebody else, or you have Captain Malillo in your life. So I always like to say, pay tribute to those people that are guide and mentor us and give us opportunities to be successful. So thank you as a Rotary for doing that for the community. Lots to share about SEAL things, and you've probably heard other Navy SEALs talk. So I won't go too detailed, but the one thing I do want to share is why is SEAL training the way it is? Why is it difficult? Why is it a focus of a lot of attention? And the answer, I've thought a lot about it, and I think you're going to be surprised at my answer, but it's about camaraderie and love. Because when you go through challenging, hard things together, it forms a tight bond. I mean, just think the people that you were freshmen in college with are probably still dear friends today because you did all that stuff when you were 18 years old in those challenging times when we were all knuckleheads. Maybe you guys weren't, but I was. So, and specifically, SEAL training is 6 months long. The first 2 months is physical fitness, the second 2 months is all about scuba diving, and the third 2 months is land operations. And Hell Week is the fifth week of that first two-month block. And Hell Week starts on Sunday and ends on Friday, so it's this week-long blur of stuff. And the best advice I ever got was, if you're ever going to quit, don't do it until you get to the chow hall. And I thought, well, that's weird advice, but turns out it's simple and brilliant, because who's going to quit in the dining hall? You're eating, you're warm, you got coffee, nobody's yelling at you, and any thoughts of misery just kind of fleet out of your brain, and then you step back out into training, and you just have to make it 3 hours till they feed you the next time. But the instructors are devious human beings, and they know, they got this same advice, and they know that on Wednesday night, hump day, they don't feed us in the dining hall. They feed us cold, yucky MREs. And that particular Wednesday night, I remember sitting with my bottom. Our bottoms were in the soft, mushy sand with the small waves lapping at our ankles, kind of cold, sitting hip to hip. And the sun was setting, looking out in a westerly direction there in San Diego. And I remember shivering and thinking, man, this is just not fun. What am I doing here? And had this distant look in my eyes, not really thinking about quitting, but just self-pity and misery. And at that moment, my buddy Don, who was sitting right next to me, for whatever reason, he looked at me and he saw the look in the eyes. I don't know if he said anything, but he reached out and he tapped my forearm with his hand. And I just remember looking at him, and he said, "Are you good?" And it was just that moment of team member interaction, his hand touching my forearm, the look in the eye of, "I'm here for you if you need it," that brought me right back to the sandy beach and realizing, all right, we can get through this, and on we go. That, to me, is the essence of SEAL training, to make it so that everybody realizes that you're in it together. And certainly applies in life, right? Like life is hard, health things are hard, work situations are hard, family situations are hard, and we get through it all together with groups like your comrades at Rotary. So I did a couple deployments to Afghanistan. I won't go into any of those stories. We'll open it up for questions. You can ask anything you want, but it was in 2003 I submitted an astronaut application to be for the class of 2004, and I actually was in Afghanistan when I applied. Well, it's a long process to apply, and you have a week-long interview. You go to Houston, and you get a whole bunch of poking and prodding medically and some real interview stuff. And then you go away back to your normal life. And for me, that was, I did my interview in Houston, and the next week I left for Afghanistan for 6 months. And towards the end of that, right at the end of my deployment, I got an email that said, "Hey, please call the astronaut selection office on Monday at noon or something." And during that weekend, I had come back home. So I was in my house in Norfolk, Virginia, waiting. If you ever saw the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like the kids are looking at the clock and it ticks backwards. It was the same kind of thing, waiting for to call, when all of a sudden the phone rang. And the gouge was, if it's the chief astronaut's voice that you hear, it's probably a good call. If it's the head of human resources at NASA, you're not going to be an astronaut. And so the phone rang, and it had Houston caller ID, and I answered it, and he said, hey, this is Kent Rominger, who was the chief astronaut. We'd like to know if you'd like to come work with us at the Johnson Space Center. So that was kind of the second phone call that changed the trajectory of my life, the first being Captain Melillo, the second being from Kent Rominger. And I moved from Virginia to Houston, and then spent the next 17 years as a Navy person. When you get selected as an astronaut, if you're a military member, you remain a military member. Your paycheck comes from the service. You accrue your time toward retirement and all of those things. So I moved to Johnson Space Center, and the first couple of years you're an astronaut candidate. NASA has an acronym for everything, so those people are called ASCANs, which you don't want to be that guy for too long, and so you're motivated to study. It's about 2 years to get through that, which is basically you're a graduate student for space operations is the best way to think about it. We're a lot of time in classroom and then into different simulators to apply the things that the instructors teach you. One of the key things, I was talking to somebody just recently about training. I'm getting a little sidetracked, but I found this to be interesting in this conversation recently about training at NASA. And in the simulators, the instructors figure out what things to break in the computer model that then we as the crew respond to, and you have checklists, and you do what the checklist tells you, but usually you get to a point where you have to deviate from the checklist, and that's where they want to see how the crew interacts together. And it's not the things that they break that they care so much about. It's about how they can break down the communication in the cockpit. So they get one person focused on their side, the other person focused on their side, and the challenge really becomes that interaction, that team communication between the others. And just recently was chatting with somebody, as I mentioned, about this, and I thought that was very applicable to our lives now in business, right? Like communication is fundamental to everything we do, and I thought, oh wow, didn't know it at the time, but the instructors, that's what their job is to break down the fundamental lines of communication in a cockpit. Anyways, getting a little sidetracked. The most enjoyable thing to do as an astronaut, the most astronaut-y thing we do are spacewalks. And as was mentioned, I've done about 10 of them, and, well, not about, I did 10, and there's just nothing like opening a hatch, seeing a hand reach out and pull the hatch off its seal, looking at Earth below you, and then realizing, holy cow, that's my hand. And you get on with the task. Spacewalks are about 6.5 hours long, very scripted with the procedures that we have to do. We rehearse them in the pool in Houston, Neutral Buoyancy Lab. It's a big, giant pool. And we run through every timeline as much detail as we can, so that we have a pretty good product that then is executed on space. So you know what you're getting yourself into usually, and 9 of those spacewalks went exactly by the plan, but there was one in 2013 where I was with an Italian crew member where we were outside where we were working. We were about 45 minutes into the planned 6-hour thing when he started to get water in his helmet, and water is not meant to be inside your helmet. There's really only a couple sources that it could be. We have a drink bag, like a Camelback, on our bellies. It's like 32 ounces of water, and you, of course, can sweat. There's urine. Astronauts do wear diapers, so normally the urine's pretty captured. And then there's technical cooling water in the backpack of the spacesuit that's really never meant to cross into any lines of oxygen that would come into your helmet. So as water was getting in there, we're looking at it, talking, the ground, Luca, myself, where's this source of water coming from? Not really sure. when he grabbed a bite of one, it's hard to picture water in here because it's staying nice and comfortably in your glasses. But up there, it floats around, and the surface tension of the drops of water drive the behavior of the water. And these little balls were zipping around inside, and they would get stuck to the inside of his helmet or onto his face. And he grabbed one of them, and it was really super cold, and he said, it tastes terrible. And so the super cold part, we knew, okay, there's no way that's sweat, urine, or Camelback on your belly. It has to be technical water. And so at that point, we realized, okay, let's hurry up and get this spacewalk over. And he started to go back. Well, while he was just standing there stationary, the water wasn't moving at all. But as soon as he started to move himself to go back to the safety of the airlock, which was maybe 50 yards away, that water just kind of spread around his face, and it went from a very comfortable, not comfortable and inconvenient situation to really bad and chaotic quickly. And the point of this is where we realized that's where training and preparation come in, because he and I don't really remember the exact actions that our hands did and that our paths to get back to safety, but it was so well trained, those practices, those systems, those actions from the team in Houston, that somehow we got back to the airlock and got in. But both he and I attribute that to really solid training and preparation, and that was part of our culture at NASA. And then when I left NASA and became a president of a nonprofit, I had never run a board meeting before, so I was like, I can do spacewalks, I can launch in space, but golly, I have no idea how to run a board meeting. So I had the staff, and we sat down and we did a simulation of a board meeting, and they looked at me like, you're the craziest boss we've ever had in our whole life. But we had a simulated board chair, and everybody went through their stuff, and it got me in my comfort zone, and I attribute that to training and preparation. I don't do that anymore. Now I know how to run a board meeting. But so anyways, in the summer of 21, I was wrapping up my government career, and my good friend who I went through SEAL training with, he was a board member of the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, and he called me and said, hey, what are you going to do when you retire? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet. Well, would you consider coming to help us lead the National Medal of Honor Museum? I didn't know anything about the project, but Houston to Dallas is one Buc-ee's stop away on a drive, so I did that and came up here and just kind of fell in love with the project as a mission. Really could see the can-do spirit that this Metroplex has, and specifically the city of Arlington gave a wonderful plot of land nestled in between the baseball stadiums and the football stadium, and realized that, you know what, the 17-year-old me wouldn't have answered this question, but what I loved so much about wearing the uniform for 28 years of our nation was this sense of service and giving something to the country. And all of my friends who had retired said, just be ready for that to be a little bit of a void in your stomach when you hang up your uniform. And so this project for me has been a way to fill that void, because it feels like we are delivering a product to the nation. It happens to be here in our Metroplex, and it's for our nation's heroes, the Medal of Honor recipients. Medal of Honor has been around since 1861. Abraham Lincoln was the president that put it into existence, and since then there's been 3,519 awards of the medal, and there are 63 of those people living today. Just last week it was 65. Very sadly, we lost 2 of them in the last 5 days. So 63 living Medal of Honor recipients, and we're really, really proud to bring this project for them. The project also includes a leadership institute, which will be physically headquartered and operated out of the museum facilities, but that is our arm to reach the nation. And as you know, the future of our country is with our youth and our kids and education. And in that institute, we'll have a K through 12 program, and we already do actually, and as well as an adult program where there's leadership content, just like you've probably gone through programs in your adult life as well. We partnered with the NFL they have a program called the Character Playbook, and just last summer, we added a Medal of Honor module to the Character Playbook, so we're in about 25,000 classrooms right now, thanks to the NFL's partnership, and we've done 3 in-person 4-day leadership programs in Arlington with Medal of Honor recipients as part of those, the program and content. It's a really nice program, and we were pretty proud of it. And then the final part of the project is a monument on the National Mall in DC, because if you think of a national project, well, why the heck isn't it in DC? Why is it in Texas? Well, it's really super hard to get real estate on the National Mall, and it takes a long time in time and energy and money to do that. So our answer to that was, let's put a monument there, museum somewhere else, which is here, and the monument in DC. We'll probably start construction on the monument after we complete the museum here. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned it, we've been under construction in Arlington for about 2 years, and in 1 year, well, 13 months, we will have our opening celebration for our doors will be open there. So that's the overall project. That's what we're doing now. Come by for a visit anytime you want. If you want to host a Rotary event at the museum, happy to give a tour. It's a really unique building. It's not a typical square-sided building. It's a box suspended in the air by 5 gigantic columns, and a cool spiral staircase situation that gets you up there. So anyway, come by for a visit. I'd love to hear questions.
Okay, and I'll take the mic so everybody can hear me.
Yeah, Jeff.
Well, here you go, Jeff.
So Chris, clearly the requirements to be awarded the Medal of Honor, if you could speak to that, and also, the Bronze Star, the Silver Star, then the Medal of Honor. But if you could speak to the exclusivity of that in a sense, and also how many applications have there been that have actually come to the 3519, I think you mentioned, of those awarded?
Yeah, so it's difficult to answer exactly how many submissions of the medal have there been, because it goes into the Department of Defense system, and it's a long process. To give a perspective on exclusivity, since 1861, about 40 million people have worn the uniform of our nation's military, and less than 4,000 have received it. So that's a decimal point with some zeros and a 1. I don't know how many zeros and a 1, but it's a very small percentage. And it's a very, very difficult, now in the Civil War, it was the only medal that was awarded. There were no Bronze Star, Silver Star, and such. It was just, that was the medal. Now, as you mentioned, Jeff, that there are different grades of medal as people assess what level of the action is, and Medal of Honor being the highest. So very often, a medal will be submitted for Medal of Honor, a submission will be at that level, and then the process gets it lower, and then periodically there are reviews of medals, and sometimes, and just happened late last year, a Vietnam gentleman had a Silver Star that was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. So.
Hey Chris, thanks for being here today. Just a curious question, were you ever a scout?
I was a Cub Scout, but we didn't do fun stuff, and I thought it was boring, and so.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the fundamental leadership lesson, right? Like the Cub Scout leader was a dud.
Okay. I was just curious. There's several people in the room that are involved, that have been involved in scouting, and have kids that are in scouting. I'm wondering if you have specific programs at the museum for scouting, and maybe merit badges, things like that.
That's a great question, and we definitely will. In fact, one of our Medal of Honor recipients and board member, Britt Slabinski, was an Eagle Scout, and he tells this amazing story. He has to make a decision to get on a helicopter with his unit to go rescue people, and he's sitting there having this discussion in his head, and the Boy Scout motto comes into his, "On my honor, I will do my best." And he said, right there, I'm done. We're going. And so Boy Scouts trickled into his blood deep.
Chris, thank you for being here again. It's an honor. This is my second time to hear Chris speak, and it's truly an honor. Can you if I remember this correctly, the gentleman that got you into the Naval Academy, you ran into him years later, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell that part. So in 2020, right before my last mission, we had a launch party for my closest friends and my family members, about 250 people, and my wife was organizing it. And of course, she has heard me tell the Captain Malillo story tens and tens and tens of times, maybe 100 times. And leading up to that party, she kept on asking me, what are you going to say at the party? What are you going to say at the party? And she never asked me that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to say thank you, love you, bye. And so she said, no, you really should tell the Captain Malillo story. So I do, and it's a room like this. I know everybody except one person. And I tell the story, and right at the punchline, she stopped me and said, hold on, Chris, Captain Malillo, will you please stand up? She had tracked him down 30 years later, and I finally got to give him a hug and shake his hand and say thank you in person. Yeah. And since then, we've been friends and we stay connected by email. Yeah.
Chris, I'm in scouting, so I appreciate what Jeff did, so thank you. Thank you for your service. I have a two-part question on the astronaut corps. So I grew up, my last name is Carpenter, saying that I have an uncle on the Mercury 7.
Sure do.
He may have been my uncle, I don't know, but I like to brag that I have an uncle.
Like Taylor Swift's uncle?
Uncle Carpenter. But anyways, I always wanted to be an astronaut. So I'm wondering the future of our astronaut corps, given that we retired the space shuttle, and given what Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX, if you can comment on what's the future for our youth that may want to be an astronaut. Is there opportunities?
Yeah, so this is actually a really exciting time in our nation's space program because we've got government programs, which I was a government astronaut employed through NASA, and now we have commercial companies that are very soon to have their own astronaut cadre. Right now, SpaceX uses NASA astronauts, and occasionally, like actually on the space station right now is the third commercial mission of the International Space, where SpaceX sold tickets to paying customers to tourism, for tourism in space, different than Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, where you just get a about 20-minute flight and land on right back where you took off. When I became an astronaut in 2004, we had 120 astronauts. We were flying space shuttles 6-7 times a year. Each shuttle has 7 seats in it. So you do quick math, and that's about the right size to have a couple missions in training, a mission in flight, a mission just returned. And then when I retired in 21, there were about 40 astronauts, and that was a natural decline because we stopped flying the space shuttle in 2011, and from 11 to 2020, we were 100% reliant on the Russians to get us to this International Space Station, and that we purchased 4 American tickets per year, and it wasn't cheap. The Russians are way better negotiators than we are. When I flew in 2013, the price tag was $57 million for my training and my flight. And when I flew again with the Russians in 2020, it was about $78 million for that flight. Times 4 per year, that's $250 million that we, the United States, were sending to Russia for launch services. We don't do that anymore, thank goodness. But it was a position that we were in when we had no way to get there besides there. So anyway, bottom line is, it's a really nice partnership between the commercial companies and NASA, and their success, the commercial company's success in low Earth orbit, will allow NASA to focus its time, energy, resources on going to Mars. Yeah. I know Rotaries end at the stroke of 1300, so I'm sensitive to that.
Chris, thanks a lot for being here. That was very, very interesting. Is there a place on the internet that you can go to see a list of the Medal of Honor winners? And also, I'm more curious, is there a description or a bio of what they did to earn the medal?
Oh yeah, there's multiple places where you can go. The Medal of Honor Society is the organization of the living recipients. They have some webpage. Our museum, mohmuseum.org, we have a database there. Of course, Wikipedia won't let you down. There's lots of resources and some amazing stories. And by the way, I should mention, the museum here is not a place that's going to focus on military history or tanks and airplanes. It's a place that's focused on people. This is going to be a museum that's for biographies of normal people that did something amazing when the country needed them to do it, and that's what we're focused on, the stories of people. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.
Chris, thank you so much for speaking. And in honor of your speaking, a book will get placed at McShane Elementary in honor of you being here. So we appreciate it very much. And now I'd like to have, next week, Kathy Allred's going to be speaking to the international conference. Kathy, you've been 17 times? 18 times? 17. So, you know, as a president, you have the opportunity to go to the international conference, like we all do, but I will tell you, I had a great time when I went to Australia last year, and it's just amazing. You see the reach and the touch of what Rotary does throughout the world. So looking forward to that program. John Brown will now do our four-way test.
Of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, John.